I was kind of a weak, average built kid. So I got picked on in school. And in my mind, I'd be like, you don't know my family and stuff. And
Yeah.
but inside, I wouldn't say that to other people. No. And inside, I would think like, I come from such a good family and still all this is happening to me. Really, who am I if outside of my family name?
Yeah.
And I think that questioning within me gave me a desire to create my own worth outside of my family name.
That was Abhinav Jindal, a second-generation leader in family-owned hospitality business Jindal Group, and a family business coach who works with second-generation entrepreneurs. We'll hear more from Abhinav later in the episode. Welcome to the Family Business Family Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Needles, editor-in-chief of Family Business Magazine. This episode also features part 2 of my conversation with Camille Johnson, family liaison at HF Capital, the Haslam Family Office. She talks more about her role in engaging and educating multiple generations of the family, which formed its family office in 2020 following the sale of Pilot, which operates the Pilot Flying J travel centers and truck stops. But first, in this interview, we're joined again by contributing editor Dennis Jaffe, returning to unpack his latest column, Ownership is More Than a Gift, It is a Responsibility. Dennis breaks down the real differences between ownership, control, management, and stewardship, using a shared family vacation home to show how quickly those lines blur. He also explains why fights over dividends are so rarely just about the money. Hi, Dennis. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you, Zach. It's good to be here again.
Yeah, always good to see you. And you have a new column out, which is already available as we speak up on familybusinessmagazine.com. By the time this issue comes out, by the time this podcast comes out, the issue should be on everyone's doorsteps as well. The column is titled "Ownership is More Than a Gift; It is a Responsibility," and that's a great way to sum up what we're talking about today. And so, let's start there. You mentioned that, just like the title says, ownership is a responsibility. And when ownership is done right, it's an institutional achievement, not a birthright. So what does a family actually have to do to make that institutional achievement happen?
Well, so it's good. So a lot of us think of ownership as being like you own a thing. It's there,
Right.
and you can use it. It's a ring. It's a something that's nice, and that's part of ownership. But when you're dealing with a business, it's not something that is a thing that's fixed. It's a thing that keeps changing, and therefore being an owner is not just benefiting from it. It's not like owning a piece of stock or owning a there are things that need to be done. So it's there are things you need to do. There are things you need to pay attention to, and basically, the if you don't do those things, the benefits may not be there.
Right.
So the benefits aren't guaranteed in it. So good ownership is about being conscious and responsible. It's not just it's not a gift. It's not a prize. It's not something that you've got it now. You can run around and cheer. You've reached the finish line. It's really something that you have to do. And a lot of families, and particularly inheritors, think about are really concerned about the benefits and all the great things that it can happen, but they don't really take seriously or think about what they need to do to maintain it, and that's a critical failing of a lot of families.
Yeah. You mentioned, ownership, control, management, and stewardship are sort of 4 different things. And so why does the distinction between those 4 things really matter?
Well, because they're 4 different things. So you own something, that's a right, but as I said, it's also a responsibility. Controlling something is basically you have the decisions about what to do with it. So if you own it, you can sell it. If you own it, you can pass it on to who you want. If you own it, you have you decide what to do with the benefits, the profits, and you have certain things that you have to pay attention to. So that's what control is, and control means you could be one of a hundred owners of a firm, and you don't feel very much control, even though you're an owner. If you have 51%, you have the say. You have the you can make the decisions that are important, which you can't always do if you're a shared owner of something.
Right.
Management is kind of the opposite of control. It's you are now you are being paid to do certain things, to take care of something. So you're like a caretaker. You're not an
Right.
owner. You don't benefit other than the fact that you're paid to do things, and that's something. And if you could be an owner and a manager, but the responsibilities are different. The manager is a caretaker, is responsible for things, and the owner is the owner and has control or not, depending on it. So that's different. And being a steward is a kind of a newer idea, but the idea of stewardship is a kind of a sense there's a sense of the positive responsibility associated with something that you own, where you have you're taking care of it for something, you're responsible for maintaining it, and basically it's a you have to not just enjoy the benefits of ownership, but be prepared to preserve them and give them to somebody else, like your children. So it's
Absolutely.
a stewardship is a kind of a newer concept, but it's also something that can come with ownership.
Yeah, yeah, and I ask that question because I do think sometimes we conflate all of those things, right? Or they get used interchangeably in a way. Oh, well, I own this, so I also control it, or I own this and I'm
Right.
stewarding it. But you're not. It's not always that way. And you use the example of a family vacation home that
Yeah.
everybody has an
Mhm.
ownership stake in. Well, it's such a good illustration. Can you sort of walk through how that
Yeah,
process
well,
can kind of
this
play
is
these different
yeah,
things out?
this comes from personal experience.
Sure.
So a lot of people, they have shares of a vacation home. It's like a timeshare.
Right.
You're owner of a family home, but you share it with four people. So first of all, you have to make decisions about who uses it when. You can't all show
Yeah.
up and use it. So you have to have someone has to be scheduling, someone has to be paying attention, and a lot of people get ownership and say, "Wow, I own, now I own part of the family, kind of cabin, or the family beach house. That's wonderful." And
Yeah.
then at the end of the year, you get the bill for taxes, and you get the bill for insurance, and you get the bill for this and that, and
Yeah.
it's like there are expenses, and all of a sudden you see that this is going to cost you something. And a
Yeah.
lot of people, don't think about that. And then there's a decision, like who does what. So, we had a vacation home, and I came there one summer, and my beautiful couch that I loved was gone, and the leather couch that I hated was there. And it's like no one asked me. Well,
Right.
it's like, so what did I do? So I'm the owner. I was pissed off. I said, I'm going to change it. I got rid of that couch and got another couch. It's like, wait a minute. There are other owners. So you have to be part of a group, which means you
Yeah.
have to make decisions together. You have to do things. You're responsible for costs. You have to decide who gets what and who gets to use what. There's a whole lot of decisions to be made. And the vacation home is something that you have to cooperate, and families don't often have a good system, or they argue, like who should get the house during the holiday.
Yeah.
The wonderful July 4th, who's going to be there? Everybody? No. So there are decisions to be made, and it's like, what about your friends? So my son used the house, and he brought all of his friends, and they were told to clean up, and their idea of cleaning up, let's just say, was not other people's idea of cleaning up.
Yeah.
And so what happens? We say you can't use the house anymore. So there are all kinds of decisions, and this is true. The difference between just being a passive owner and enjoying something and taking care of something. And so the idea of family ownership of the business is that there's a responsibility to it, and the responsibility is sometimes vague and sometimes unclear. But if you don't do it, you suffer the consequences.
Yeah, absolutely. And then for my last question here, I wanted to just talk a little bit about dividends, because that's another area where, it's this idea of it's a passive income, and what does it entitle you to, comes up all the time, right? And you mentioned that a lot of times dividend disagreements are rooted in something more personal. It's not just about an economic thing, right? An economic issue. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, there's two things about that. One is fights about dividends are sometimes rooted in kind of family issues, old family
Yeah.
issues for example, a very common one is I worked for the business for 20 years, and yes, other people would say yes, you got a pretty good salary for that, but you say, well, I did it because I knew I was going to get ownership, and now my cousin owns the same amount, and he didn't do anything. How come he got it? And
Yeah.
so there's kind of family issues in the background, but people are arguing this isn't fair. This is the way it should be. This is what we should do. Those are the way that the things get argued in a family when they can't they don't see that they're about family things. The
Right.
other thing about dividends is dividends are not a fixed thing, and if you get a profit in a business, you have to make some choices. And some families say, "Well, what's the purpose of owning this business?" And
Yeah.
some people, and like the people that work there, say, well, the purpose is to take some of the profits, many of the profits, and reinvest them to grow the business so that our children and grandchildren can benefit. Other people say,
Yeah.
no, the purpose is that we want to live a good life, and we need to get some money, and this pays for my mortgage on my house, and pays for the kids' summer camp and this and that, and I want to take the profits out. And
Yeah.
what if there's no profits? Well, we should take the money out anyway. You mean, we borrow money to pay us, dividends?
Yeah.
Is that what we want to be doing? So the issue of what happens are family issues, and
Yeah.
it's what you do, and what you did in the past, and what you think is right and what you think is wrong, and what you want for the future. And so there, like all of these examples we're using, responsibility is something there's a lot of things that the family needs to consider and talk about, not just assume.
Right.
And particularly, you can't assume just because I'm an owner I don't have to do anything. There are things that you have to do, and the bigger the asset and the more complicated it is, and the more decisions you have to make.
In this interview, Camille Johnson, family liaison at HF Capital, the Haslam family office, discusses how she gets the youngest members of the family invested in its history long before they're old enough for ownership decisions, why educating the second generation can matter just as much as educating the next one, and what she's found to be both the hardest and most rewarding parts of her job. In this interview, Camille Johnson, family liaison at HF Capital, the Haslam family office, discusses how she gets the youngest members of the family invested in its history long before they're old enough for ownership decisions, why educating the second generation can matter just as much as educating the next one, and what she's found to be both the hardest and most rewarding parts of her job. For the really young family members who maybe are too young to like really get formally involved in like ownership and leadership decisions, What are some of like the effective ways that you've found to help them feel connected to the family enterprise? Because you have like this really cool history with Pilot J and all that. How do you kind of get them to care, and to be interested?
What do you mean? They all care. So easy.
Of course, yes.
No, I'm
Care
kidding. They
more.
actually are. Again, like I feel really lucky. I'm sure I know people say this, but I'm like, I really do just like love our family. And specifically, I'm like our G4, because they are just so much fun. People are like, well, what's been like the most helpful experience in this role? And will say without a doubt, it has been my experience as a camp counselor helping G4, because it is, to your point, they don't have, the understanding given their age. Again, our G4, it's a pretty wide age range. So we have, 17 to 1.
Right.
So meeting them where they are in terms of A, what their parents are comfortable with them knowing, and then B, just they all learn different ways. And so I think, as far as the history piece goes, a couple of years ago at one of the family meetings, we always put together these gift bags that we would give the family, just kind of in advance to be like, even if you're not jazzed to be here, here's
a present.
Yeah.
Right.
So in that one year we had, so Mr. Haslam, again, founded Pilot, is the most wonderful man. He's, again, cannot say enough great things about him. And luckily, he still comes in the office every day. So he's just right across the hall. So worked with him to create a card game, essentially.
Yeah.
And so like, it's almost like trivia, like Haslam family trivia.
Yeah.
And, I think a lot of the goal, the audience was G4, but I think some of the rest of the family realized too, they were like, oh gosh, I didn't know that. I didn't know the different pieces of the business story that, again, Mr. Haslam spoke into, because I think we always want to be really sensitive. It's not our family. It wasn't our experience. We're just here to help preserve it and help, highlight certain pieces that the family doesn't want to lose. And so the card game was really fun. We do a newsletter. And so part of the newsletter is we'll kind of pick a different piece of the, history to kind of highlight in a different way. And then from just on the history piece of things, that has been a project we have been working on, that I think honestly, it'll be like years, until it's probably fully finished. And hopefully it's never fully finished, because we want it to be reflective of both like past, present, and future. But, that kind of evolved from like, how do we tell the story in a way that the rising gen can appreciate what they're coming into, and all that. I'm like, I wish I had that for my own family. Like, I wish somebody like, hey, watch this video clip, and this is kind of in a nutshell all that you need to know. And so that's kind of what we're trying to create for the family. So it's really, it's by the family, for the family. It's not for the public in any way. So, we're really trying to just honor all that Mr. Haslam built, all that the rest of the family has built and is currently building. And the different ways that other family members were involved in the history of Pilot and making it what it was. And so we have worked with a few different organizations to try to capture that, with the goal of creating a film. Because again, the rising generation now is so, they want everything and they want to be able to watch it in like 2 to 5 minutes. And so
totally.
Where, our older generations, our wiser generations,
more senior.
More senior, yes. They, really loved having things on paper and don't mind reading through it. So we're trying to, that's part of our job as the family office, is to communicate in the ways that they want to be communicated with. So for some, that's, slide decks, and some that's videos. So
definitely. Yeah. And then, so as the family gets as the G4s or whatever generation it would be that you're
Right.
looking at, as they get older, start to understand this stuff maybe a little bit more, get more interested in like the ownership and the investment side and everything else. Is it part of your job to then start facilitating that education? So like you've kind of early on, you've taught them about the family and the history of the family and what they own or what they do for the community. As it gets older, now you have to come up with more of like almost a curriculum for the more sophisticated stuff, I guess, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so that's been, we do have, for our education, again, that's been an ongoing process too.
Yeah.
And some, families are more ready to engage and jump in than others, which again is totally fine.
Yeah.
And so the best way to think about it is almost, or at least what helps me is to think about it kind of like a roadmap.
Yeah.
And so at some point, it's just all you want to do and all that I think their parents want. And I think, what we hope for them from the family office side is just to help give them all the resources that they need and will need, both now and when they get older, to help be like thoughtful stewards of
Yeah.
they're going to come into. And it's the best way that I've thought about the education piece is like, it's like learning a language. The earlier that you do it and the earlier that you just kind of start familiarizing them with whether it's terms, different, like, hey, you're, the investment piece of things, philanthropy, like realizing your money does actually follow your values. And that's not a bad thing, but it's also something just to be aware of.
Yeah.
It's okay that your values are totally different than your siblings.
Yeah.
Or your cousins. Like, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
And it's also something to be aware of. And like, we're here from the family office side and to create, what we're doing and trying to, instill in them from the education piece is just, how do you think about those things? Just helpful tools, just different tools in your tool belt. And so again, luckily our team here at HF Capital is incredible, and we've gotten to work with some great outside advisors that have been really helpful in that too. So it's definitely it takes a village. But the biggest piece of, I think, what we do is we just want them to feel comfortable coming to us, as, feeling comfortable just building the relational equity with the family office. And that's for G4, but also for the rest of the family too. And so, just the more that they can come spend time with us, the more that they can come and spend time at the family office. It's less of a scary business place and more of, I can call, like, we have, when they get older, when our G4s get older and can actually start coming to the main family meetings, something that we've incorporated is like just mentors for them, so that if they're sitting in a meeting and feel embarrassed that they're like, gosh, I have no idea what's being talked about right now. I don't know how to make sense of anything that's being said. They lean over to, their HF Capital mentor and just be like, what are they?
What is that? Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
Just to have a resource and just somebody who, they've built a relationship with over time. And so it's not a perfect system, but I think a lot of it is just based on the relational piece of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So one more question on sort of the education piece, because I'll shout out Peter Bagala. He's our conference chair here, but he's also an advisor, and probably one of the few people who, like we were talking about before, who I would say is a family office expert, right?
We need them.
Yes. And when I started here, it's always talking about next gen education and next gen engagement. And he was like,
it's such a hot topic.
Totally right. Yeah. And it comes up a lot. But he stopped me in the one day and he was like, it's not just next gens that need work on engagement and need work on education. He's like, sometimes the next gens are more engaged or better educated than some of the current gens. And so my question is just like, what does that process look like for the folks who are in the current gen or whatever, the more senior generations, like I said?
For sure.
How do you work on engagement and education with them? Because, this family office is still relatively new.
Mm-hmm.
They have to kind of also learn how the family office serves them and what they can get out of it, right?
For sure. think, and this really, I say probably clicked for us within the last couple of years, that it's easier to think about, for G4 because they're younger, it's like, oh, well, they don't know this already. But I think exactly to your point, I'm like, well, their parents also, there was never a point in time where they didn't have a family office when they were their age.
Yeah.
And I think it's been, in a roundabout way, I think the way that it has kind of worked is, I think we've gotten actually more engagement for the more senior generations through G4. So kind of the more that we engage them, I think the more that their parents and grandparents are like, oh, that's kind of maybe interesting, or something like that. And also, I think, it's never, I will be the first to fall on the sword because I do not have a finance investment background. And so even for our investment team, I'm like, make it make sense to me. Like, if I can understand it, then you're good to go. But I think, and same, the other generations, most of them don't have finance or investment backgrounds either. And so creating it, it's our job on the family office side to create and present the information in a way that's really digestible and approachable. Because if you're given a stack, for a stack like a meeting deck, and it's 100 pages long, and you don't know what any of it says, again, it's like you're reading a different language. And so
Definitely.
you might be given all of the information, but if you don't know how to interpret the information, then we haven't done our job either.
Yeah.
And so I think from what we've done with the family offices, it's funny if you look back, the first family meeting that we did with them, over time, we've started with the binders that we would give them at the meeting were like this thick.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, they're so thick.
Yeah.
Because it really is just, okay, how do we meet you where you are and recognize that might be different than where your dad might be here and you might be in a totally different place. And so creating an event, as we think about family meetings, really creating opportunities there that's like, hey, investment 101, like, we've got you. There's a space to ask those questions that'll be a smaller group. And so, and also still meeting, again, that's the tricky part of any family meeting, is you're trying to meet a lot of different knowledge
levels of understanding. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And so I think just as long as we're giving them opportunities to feel engaged, to feel like they can ask what they might feel like is a dumb question, but what they don't realize is probably half the other people in the room also have that same question.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I would say the best way that we've kind of come to do it is realizing like, oh, okay, we can start with G4, and we don't want to neglect the more senior generations in that either.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really such a strength that you can be sort of the filter for like the really complicated investment stuff that they need to kind of make sense to you before they go to the family. Because that stuff can become so jargon heavy and acronyms and all this stuff, and it just becomes so difficult to understand. So it's actually really great that they need to kind of like cut through that, because if everybody in the family office knows what all that stuff means, it's very hard. I used to work with lawyers all the time.
Right.
They know what they're talking about, but nobody else does, right? So to be able to translate it is important.
Yes. I was like, if it can pass this, if I understand, well, at the end of meetings, sometimes I'm like, that was a really great presentation. And I know that because I understood every single thing that you were saying.
Well, there you go. Absolutely.
So I do. I'm like, if it helps, because nobody wants to be like, I don't understand.
Right.
So I'm always happy to be the one that's like, break it down. Like, you think you've broken it down, but I need you to go
a little bit more,
a little bit, even a little bit more. So
right. All right. So my last question, and I'm cheating a little bit because it's a two-parter, but I always like to ask this, especially in a family office role. What would you say is the most challenging part of your role? And then what would you say is the most rewarding part?
Mm, I mean, definitely trying to meet different, like we have 43 people. So,
Yeah.
Again, we have a 1-year-old in there, so their voice isn't quite being vocalized yet.
Right.
But, you so deeply want, like, all that I want out of a family meeting is for them to have left and feel like they had a great time and can't wait until the next one. And also that they feel, more connected as a family. Just, a tricky thing to do when you're not actually part of the family. So I think just trying to navigate a lot of different preferences and expectations and realize that, some people have been counting down the days until that meeting comes and because they're so excited, and some people have been counting down the days because they're not as excited about it. And so just
Right.
realizing like everybody's coming in with a very different, level appetite for that particular meeting.
Yeah.
And just the reality that, you know, everybody has different values, everybody has a different life experience. And so that's definitely the hardest part, is trying to create something where everybody in some way has something that they can look forward to.
Right. And get some value out of it. Yeah.
Right. Even if that's a 30-minute session that only speaks to one person in the family. But for me, that is so worth it, because that might be the only thing that they enjoy the whole time. And so that's definitely the most challenging part. But then also, the flip side is, I would say, I guess almost the other answer is that is also what makes it so amazing.
Yeah.
You get to work for, it is technical work, but we get to do it for a family. So that's definitely the thing that is the most rewarding.
Yeah.
Have loved them for a long time. And so especially for the G4, like as we think about those kids, I've known some of them for a long time now. And so it's so rewarding to watch them grow up. And, it feels like a great privilege, but also a great responsibility to think about, what the things that we're doing now can either set them up for success or potentially, are we equipping them with the tools that they need to be successful and thoughtful? And so it's so exciting. I would say that's definitely the most rewarding, is to think about the kids and just just imagining all that they are doing right now, and just kind of seeing them light up at different things. And it's fun to think about just them down the road. So, and how even in a small way, if we can, I think the way that we can think about it is, are we helping or are we hurting? And so as long as we're just helping them, even in a small way, that's worth it. So,
yeah, definitely. In this interview, Abhinav Jindal, a second-generation leader in hospitality business, Jindal Group, and a family business coach who works with second-generation entrepreneurs, talks about growing up in a family enterprise. Abhinav also opens up about learning to separate his self-worth from his last name, and how starting a business of his own, far from home, helped him get there. Hi, Abhinav. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Zach. It's a pleasure. I'm so excited to be here.
Same here. Yeah, I think it's going to be really, really interesting. I'm really interested to hear your story, and your family business is really cool. So why don't we start there? Tell me about Jindal Group and how you came to be involved in the family business, and also how many family members do you work with currently?
Sure. So my family's been into business for over 100 years. We don't have the same business carried over all these generations. and we've been in business for that long. I got associated to my family business in 2017 when I came out of my graduation. I had done Bachelor's of Business Administration, and I joined my family business by looking after a beautiful boutique experiential nature resort that we own in Jim Corbett National Park in India. It's a wildlife sanctuary known for Royal Bengal tigers, and the resort is located 8 kilometers inside the jungle, right in the middle of nowhere. And it's a beautiful journey. I've seen deers. I was lucky enough to spot once. Once I spotted a tiger on my way to work, and that was
Wow.
cool. So that's where I started my entrepreneurial or my career journey. In my family business, there's now 5 members. There's my father, my brother who's just joined the business this year. He's still doing up his last year of graduation, and he's doing business on the side. And there's my uncle and his son.
Excellent. Excellent. And just to kind of follow on to that really quickly, I mean, was this something that you always envisioned yourself doing? Was family business something that was kind of always on the horizon for you? Or did that develop later in your life that you decided it was the right fit?
Well, I always knew I wanted to do business. And when you come up in a family business, the best option is to join your business, especially when you're right out of the gate. That's
Yeah.
kind of what happened with me. Interestingly enough, when I started my career, I wanted to get a job because I wanted to learn how people work in a company, so that I can best manage people when I look after my business.
Yeah.
And my dad talked me out of it, which was one of the best decisions he had me made. And I'm so glad I made that decision because I was able to learn so much more being a part of my family business. I
Yeah.
always wanted to also do something of my own, which I ended up doing. So I'm a part of my a part of my time goes towards my family business, and the rest of it goes towards building something my own, which is also associated with the family, although it's more my kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing I wanted to ask about, because this is something that comes up so much with next gens, and especially when a next gen has that same last name that's on the company, on the signage and on the door.
Yeah.
You've talked about this idea of like not attaching your self-worth to your last name. How did you learn to stop doing that in your own career? And was there a specific event that in your own career that forced that realization? What did that look like for you?
So to answer the later question first, it was nothing that happened to me in my career that made me realize that my self-worth should not be attached to my family name.
Right.
Rather, it was in school.
Oh,
See, in school, when I was young, I had all the pride that I come from this family and we come from a small town, so we're pretty well known. And in this town, I didn't know people, but people knew me. So I
yeah.
always had that respect, even though I had no respect of my own, but because of my family, I had the respect and the goodwill and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, in school, when I went, there wasn't that. And I went to schools outside of my city. So, yeah, people knew I come from a good family and stuff, but I was kind of a weak, average built kid. So I got picked on in school. And in my mind, I'd be like, you don't know my family and stuff.
Yeah.
But inside, I wouldn't say that to other people. No. And inside, I would think like, I come from such a good family and still all this is happening to me. Really, who am I if outside of my family name?
Yeah.
And I think that questioning within me gave me a desire to create my own worth outside of my family name.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, what led me to and how did I got not attached from my family name or disattached or whatever the word there is. There wasn't a specific event. I think it happened over the years. There was many things that happened in my life. Well, I moved from India to Canada, and when I moved to Canada, I started my own business. I got incorporated within the first week that after I landed here. So nobody in Canada knew about my family. I could tell them all the cool stories about our family resort and stuff. And I built all the goodwill that I have. I built it by how I showed up and
Yeah.
who I was, which had very less to do with my family name. I love my family name, and I'm
Yeah.
so grateful that I have this name and I was born in this family. I have so much love and respect for it. And I learned how to be myself outside of my family name and outside of that identity of a typical second generation business owner who's looking after their family business.
Yeah.
Also, a major thing that helped me was when I released my baggage and let go of limiting beliefs like I'm not worthy, I'm not enough, because really people associate their own worth to their family name when they feel that they're not enough within who they are themselves.
Yeah.
And the moment that I believe that I am enough who I am and I'm amazing by being the person I am, I had my own self-esteem, my own self-worth, and the family name was no longer associated to my self-worth, and it was still a big part of my identity.